The Blue Jewel.
Chapter 8. Part 5. Doubts, you have doubts, here great mags and distinguished warriors, they have questions that they cannot answer although the clues are more than evident. We will start from the beginning so that this matter is clear and my honor free of doubt. We have to go back to the Age of Heroes, when the elves still dominated the world with their kingdoms but were in frank decline after the bloody wars between them. Men and dwarfs began to prosper in numbers. The orcs had long since been banished from the Dark Mulak and were scattered across the Golden Plains. The gods had left this world as a pact so that the forces of evil would not enter it. But the god of evil was not satisfied. He demanded to enter this world, and for that he needed to open the door that unites our world with his. As we all know, the god of evil did not make it thanks to the action of the last great king of the elves, Alabart, and the god Elaban. The great victory caused that Alabart to be named king of all the elven kingdoms as in the first era, and his lineage is the most important to the elves. What no one knew was that the return of the god of evil had the permission of the supreme god for his return. Elaban disobeyed his divine father's orders and allied himself with the last hero. A new golden age, everyone said, and as in the first era what no one expected happened, the day when the great king offered his triumph to the great god Elaban in his great capital. The sky turned black and a tremor swept across the globe. The city of Turkheimak, the great capital of the new great unified kingdom of the elves, fell under a great curse condemning all its inhabitants. The curse of Turkheimak brought about the birth of a new era that we are in today. We call it the Age of the Damned. The cursed of the city advanced at night, transmitting their curse to others, threatening the entire world. However, some magicians united and created a huge magic wall as in the early days. They contained the damned. Those magicians are the ones who originated my order, and as a thank you Ulbiana gave us the first tower here in Tripulia. Kush walked up to the Grand Mage. That happened thousands of years ago. The gods punished this world for preventing the entrance of the god of evil and cursed our saviors. Many people lost faith in the gods. From then on the elves closed themselves in their kingdoms, the dwarfs became greedy and men created kingdoms from the spoils between them they wore to exhaustion. Theodorus Magnus was silent and asked, Elaban? Kush smiled before answering. It seemed as if the great mage was examining him for ancient knowledge under the watchful eye of the rest. The cursed god, the protector of Shanaris, was condemned to wander among mortals for all eternity for disobeying his father. Excellent! Few know so many details of the beginning of the Age of the Damned. Now, what do you know about Elaban's jewelry? Kush didn't answer, it was suspenseful. Theodorus smiled, and with a gesture with his hand he indicated that Ferdinand should intervene, who was annoyed by not being the protagonist, began to speak. The records were lost or many wanted to forget them, angry at the abandonment of the gods. Elaban had given the elves 7 jewels. They were kept in every temple dedicated to Elaban in each of the kingdoms. Men, dwarfs, elves went there because through those jewels any disease could be cured without asking for anything in return, and the elves were obliged to let anyone who needed cure pass, which led to many exchanges between the races. The jewels of Elaban. I thought he was a legend. Well, it is what you have in possession. The mercenaries looked at each other. Many knew the legend of Elaban's curse but thought it was a children's tale. Gosberg stepped forward again with a haughty air. This is all well and good, but you haven't told us the purpose of the exchange. Theodorus smiled. A few months ago I heard rumors that members within my order are pursuing cursed knowledge and that they started looking for Elaban's lost jewels. Everyone was shocked at this news. The White Robes were loyal to death to their Grand Master. That there was a group of magicians practicing necromancy was indicative of the alarming degree of corruption among the mags. Theodorus seemed very upset at admitting corruption within his order. Since their creation they have never been reunited, but it is said that whoever gathers them will have the same power as the gods. You can't play with the power of the gods, not even you wizards. Gosberg's words were threatening, but Theodorus was not daunted. We have fulfilled the part of the pact and now we want the jewel. Gosberg shrugged and gestured to Aris, who walked over to the huge Sabu, and Sabu handed him the velvet bag. The half-orc took the contents out of his palm and there was the jewel like a marble, blue in color, innocent. He turned on his steps and turned towards the magicians but passed by Arian, and then it happened that the jewel began to shine in an intense way as it did sometimes, and everyone was surprised. No way. No way. Fedoras got up and ran to the height of Aris and Arian. Since the curse of Turkheimak, everyone disappeared, died, was exterminated since the fall of their god. What are you saying? Ferdinand was incredulous. A priestess of the god Elaban. Give the jewel to the young woman. Aris obeyed the Grand Master's order and left the jewel in the palm of Arian's hands, the glow even more intense until it was reduced to an incandescent flame within the jewel. The one who was totally exultant was Fedoras, who approached to observe the young woman in more detail. A priestess, as the ancient texts say, she must be a descendant of priests who survived the fall of Elaban. Of Caesarea, in the free lands north of the kingdom of Tame. The magicians began to murmur among themselves. The ancient kingdom of the north, the towers of oblivion, and very close is Bursary. Fedoras raised his hand for silence. There was a temple dedicated to Elaban in the ancient northern kingdom. It is a remote place. Surely there the priests of Elaban survived by hiding among the other inhabitants. The old wizard gestured to the young woman to hand over the jewel. Arian obeyed and the jewel ended up in Fedoras' hand. Who smiled? If the council is unopposed, I believe that I will guard the jewel, it is safe in my hands. Ferdinand was too astonished to contradict Fedoras's proposal, and the rest of the council approved the proposal of the Grand Master of the White Robes, who sat back in his place quite satisfied. Aris spoke again before the council. Well, now we need to pay our fees. Ferdinand was thinking of speaking, but again Fedoras beat him to it. Hi! Before your well-deserved collection, I have a proposal to make to this council. Everyone looked back at the old wizard. I propose to finance an expedition to Turkheimak to recover the triumph of Elaban. Aris is not easy to impress and almost loses his balance and composure. Kush stared at the magician trying to remember everything he knew about the cult of Elaban. Gosberg smiled sarcastically at the magician's proposal. The triumph of Elaban. Ferdinand added. The largest and most powerful of the 7 jewels is in the great temple dedicated to this god and guarded by the damned, but that jewel can only be taken out of the great temple by a priest of the god Elaban, and here we have one of them. The triumph of Elaban where it is safest is in Turkheimak itself, there it is free from being used by anyone. Gosberg questioned Fedoras's argument. Can you guarantee this council that no one will find another priest from Elaban? And your most illustrious lady, can you guarantee that this council is free of corruption? Fedoras smiled again. I can swear before the gods that I vouch for the incorruptibility of all the members of this council. This vote of confidence surprised the rest of the magicians. He had never responded with this total confidence to his brothers in his entire life. If this council has the triumph of Elaban in its custody, we will guarantee that it will never fall into dark hands. There's something to be said for mags, they love objects of power, especially the cursed ones. Gadgets lost millennia ago for which they pay fortunes, now being able to study the great jewel created by a god would be an indication of the power they had reached in Tripulia, a feat that would raise them as the most powerful city in the world. Ferdinand imagined what the history books would tell about him, to obtain the triumph of Elaban, to be able to study him, the power of the gods. What do you want in exchange for going to look for Elaban's triumph? The mercenaries looked at each other. It was a complicated undertaking, but they could ask for whatever they wanted. The mags would pay for one of the 2 moons if necessary. It's not our business, Arian doesn't belong to the company, we can't speak for her. All the attention was on the young woman who was still processing what she had felt when she heard the jewel. She felt something strange, a power that was familiar to her she once had, A similar sensation, but this was much more powerful, and if that was what she felt with a small duel with the Triumph, it should be much more. I'll go for the Triumph. She didn't seem to be talking, she had great confidence in her words. Aris went ahead, it was time to talk about the fees. We want 5 chests full of gold coins. The magicians looked at each other, it was a huge fortune. It was emptying the council coffers for 2 years, but they all voted in favor. They agreed to draw up and sign the contract on both sides the next day. The expenses of the expedition were borne by the Great Council, and so the meeting ended. The night covered Tripulia, they were all seated in the inn. The council's gold had managed to rent it exclusively for them. Confidentiality had to be maximum. Arian was thoughtful, she was a priestess of the god Elabin. She only knew him by hearsay. In Caesarea the ancient story was told to small children and only in small pieces. Now she had to catch up. Gush was writing a report to Deboke where he would be sent a copy of the contract that they would sign tomorrow. With luck the mail would arrive at the ports to the east where the rest of the company had planned to embark for Almera, so Deboke would receive the latest news. The debate was heated, events had been precipitated unexpectedly. Everyone was waiting to get paid and returning home. Now they had a rather difficult mission in their hands. Agnorok was scratching his head, something was not right.